I'm going to tell you some very scary stories related to the cemetery. So do listen to the stories till the end. And if you are new to the channel, then subscribe to the channel by remembering. Let's start the story. I am going to tell you, my name is Aaron, and today I am going to tell you about a true scary incident that happened to me. This incident happened to me in my friend's house. The place where my friend's house was, there was a very big cemetery behind it. It was not at all close, but the cemetery and my friend. There was a drain flowing between his house, and there was a boundary wall around that cemetery. Sometimes, I used to go and stay at my friend's house. When there was no one at his house, I used to go to support him. But the night after the incident happened, I stopped going to his house. Actually, that night, I and my friend drank 4 bottles of beer. After that, we both slept. Around midnight, I heard the door opening, and my sleep was broken. I saw my friend coming out of the room. I was going out. There was a long corridor in front of that door, and at the end of it, there was a toilet. I thought that my friend must be urinating. That is why he was going to the toilet. So I also followed him, because I also had to go to the toilet, my friend. He peed, and then without looking at me and saying anything to me, he went straight back towards the room and was drunk. I was also getting drunk, so I did not say anything to him and went into the toilet. So I also followed him because I also had to go to the toilet, my friend. He peed, and then, without looking at me and saying anything to me, he went straight back towards the room and was drunk. I was also getting drunk, so I did not say anything to him and went into the toilet and started doing my work. There was a small toilet in the toilet. There was a window which opened in the back part of the house, where there was a dirty drain, and behind that, there was a cemetery. My eyes went to the boundary wall of the cemetery, and I looked at it. I saw someone sitting upstairs. Whoever it was, he was sitting in such a way that his face was towards us. I came out of the toilet and went near a big window and started looking at him. I felt as if he had seen me standing in the window. She stood in that wall. Then I came to know that she was a woman. She was wearing a white saree. She started walking in that wall, but her face was towards me. I could not see clearly because there was darkness all around. But around, I could see a little from the reflection of the light. Her face was on the right side, that is, towards me. But she was walking towards the front. Then I heard the sound of water falling behind me. I quickly turned and looked back. Then I got scared because my friend was standing behind me, urinating in the drain. I told him, "Look, who is that woman?" My friend looked towards the window and said, "Which woman?" I looked back out of the window, but there was no one there. I went back. When I looked at my friend, this time, I got goosebumps. My friend was walking towards the room in the opposite direction. That is, his face was towards me. His big eyes were staring at me, but he kept walking backwards. Seeing this, I started getting goosebumps out of fear. I couldn't even run away, because the way out of the house was on the other side of the corridor. And in the corridor, my friend was walking in the opposite direction. As soon as my friend was walking in the opposite direction, he entered the room. I immediately ran out of his house and started my bike and came straight to my house. Next morning, my friend called me and asked me when I left his house without informing him. Then I told my friend about the incident of the night, and also that he himself was walking like a ghost. Then I was shocked to hear what my friend told me. He told that in the drain behind him, many years ago, the dead body of an unknown woman was found. No name of that dead body was found. Then she was buried in the same cemetery. It is said that she is often seen in that cemetery, but my friend or his family never saw her, didn't see the ghost of the woman. And the second thing he told was even more scary, for which my friend himself had no explanation. And that was that he had come out only once to urinate last night, when I, after convincing my friend that he had come out for the second time also, and he had urinated in the drain. Then my friend, while talking to me on the phone, checked his CCTV footage and told me that in that footage, I was standing near the window and I am talking to someone in the air. And after that, I look scared towards the corridor, and then I run out of the house in fear. I explained to my friend that I was not talking to the air, but to him, and seeing him walking strangely like a ghost, I ran away in fear from there, but my friend could not give me any explanation. And after that night, I never went to his house. Even today, when I remember that incident, I get goosebumps. My name is Kamal. This incident happened to me 15 years ago. At that time, I was doing B.Tech and lived in a girls' hostel. At that time, I was very crazy about Shah Rukh Khan. Even today, I was more crazy about Shah Rukh. And it was only because of Shah Rukh that I was saved from dying that day. Actually, Shah Rukh Khan's Rab Nibhana Di Jodi was playing in the cinema hall, and my friend Avinash had also bought the tickets for the late-night show of that movie. I had to climb the wall of the hostel to go to the picture hall. Avinash did not have any car at that time, so he asked me to meet him directly at the picture hall. I somehow managed to hide from everyone and climbed the wall of the hostel. The side of the wall on which I jumped was towards the graveyard. There was land, and I had to pass through the same cemetery to reach the road. It was 9 o'clock in the night. There was peace all around in the cemetery. Although I was not afraid of ghosts, because till that time, I had never had any such incident. There was no incident, but at that time, in the darkness of the night, the cemetery was looking scary, but I had to do anything to go and watch SRK's movie. So I started walking through the cemetery. There were many old and new graves in that cemetery, but there was a grave which looked like it had been dug some time ago. It was just a pit, and from inside that pit, I heard the crying sound of a dog puppy. I went closer to that pit and thought of taking that puppy out. Then I will move ahead. I peeked inside that pit, but it was dark inside. I took out my mobile phone from my pocket and lit its flashlight and looked inside the pit, but there was nothing inside it. And now the sound. The sound had also stopped, and then I felt as if someone was standing behind me. And as soon as I could look back, he pushed me, and I fell straight inside that pit. Now, I was inside that pit, and from outside, I was greeted by someone. I heard someone's laughter, a woman's laughter. I tried to get out of that pit, but the pit was about 6 feet deep. No matter how much I tried to get out, I would slip back and fall inside. Then I saw someone's head outside the pit. That pit. She was bending down and looking at me. Her hair was long and tangled. This showed that she was a woman, but I could not see her face. Because of the darkness, I could only see her shadow. She was just a hole. I too was silently looking at her from the pit. After some time, the black shadow retreated from the pit. I immediately found my phone and called my friend Avinash and told him that I was standing in a pit in the cemetery. After some time, he came and pulled me out of the pit. After that, we both came out of the cemetery and asked the watchman outside about that woman inside the cemetery. First, the watchman took me and Avinash from above. He stared down and asked us what we both were doing inside the cemetery. First, the watchman took me and Avinash from above. He stared down and asked us what we both were doing inside the cemetery. I told him everything. Then the watchman said, "This is a cemetery, madam. At night, ghosts roam here, not humans." Avinash gave him 100 rupees and said not to tell this to anyone. Let me tell you that I had entered the graveyard from the hostel by climbing the wall. After that, Avinash went to his home from there, and I went inside the hostel by climbing the wall because it was too late by then. We could not go to see the movie, so I went back to the hostel, and Avinash went to my house. After that night, I kept looking in the graveyard every night, hoping that I might see that woman again, but I never saw her again, Gave. My name is Santosh, and this thing is very old. I was 21 years old at that time. I was in great need of a job. I was not very educated, and on top of that, my face was also half burnt. And due to this, I could not do even small jobs. In my childhood, there was a fire in our house, and half of my face got burnt in the same fire. After a lot of effort, I got a job as a watchman in a cemetery. The salary was Rs 10000, and the job was to look after the cemetery at the main gate of the cemetery. There was a servant quarter nearby, and I used to live in the same. I used to live alone. There was only a street dog to whom I used to give the leftover food, so he would sleep outside my door. If that dog heard any sound in the graveyard, whenever he heard it, he used to bark, and due to which my work became easier. Because of that, I did not need to keep a watch. If someone died in the city, I used to earn good money, because I also got paid for digging graves. My life was going well, but one night, a very terrible incident happened to me. One day, a dead body was brought to that cemetery. The dead body was that of a woman and an old woman. There were not many people with her. Only 8 people were counted. All the men had already dug a pit for the grave and kept it ready. Out of those 8 men, 1 man prayed and then put the coffin in the pit and buried it. And then he left from there. In the face of those 8 men, 1 man prayed and then put the coffin in the pit and buried it. And then he left from there. In the face of those 8 men, there was no feeling of mourning. They didn't even burn flowers, candles, incense sticks, anything on the grave. They just buried the dead body and went away from there. That very night, when I was sleeping in my room, the dog lying at the door came to me. He started barking. He was not barking normally. It seemed as if he was barking at someone. I opened the door and went out. I moved the torchlight around the cemetery, but I could not see anything. I silenced the dog and went back. I went into the room and was just lying in my bed when suddenly my dog ran out of the cemetery crying. After he left, I also thought that it is good that now I can sleep peacefully. But as soon as I closed my eyes, that I heard the sound of someone crying from outside the door. It was the sound of a woman crying. It seemed as if she was standing very close to the door and crying. I switched on the light of the room and called out to the woman standing outside. Who is there outside? As soon as I said this, the sound of crying from outside stopped. I looked out of the window. A woman was walking away from my room. She was wearing a white saree, and her white hair was open. It seemed from her gait that she was an old woman. Her waist was bent, and she was walking in a strange manner. It was strange because the gate of the cemetery was locked, and its boundary wall was also very high. Then how did this woman come inside and enter this room? This question came to my mind as to why she was crying after coming near her. I opened the door and came out and called out to the woman. She stopped walking, but she did not turn towards me. I went closer to her and said to her, "Mataji, how are you here? Come, go to your home. I will come tomorrow morning." But that woman stood silently like that. Her back was towards me. No ghostly incident had ever happened to me before that night, and I started believing in ghosts while working in the cemetery. It had also ended, so it did not even occur to me that the woman could be a ghost. I called her again, but the old woman remained standing. I was about to place my hand on the shoulder of the old woman when suddenly my eyes fell on the same grave. I went towards a grave in which a dead body was buried today. The grave was still open, and the coffin inside it was also open. Then the old woman standing in front of me got down into the grave and lay down in the coffin, and then went to the grave. The soil started filling in on its own, and before I could see it, the grave was completely filled. At that very moment, I ran straight towards the gate of that cemetery, and from there went straight outside the church and sat down. The next day, the caretaker of that church came there and found me lying outside the church. She woke me up and asked me what I was doing there. Then I told her about the incident that happened in the cemetery. She didn't believe me, but she told me the story of that old woman. She told that a month ago, the old woman's only son got married. After a few days, her son and her daughter-in-law went for honeymoon. They locked their old mother in the house. For a few days, the poor old woman kept eating the leftovers. And then, when she had food, when the drinking ration ran out, the old woman remained hungry and kept waiting for her son. And then, after a few days, she died. When the smell of rotting came in the neighborhood, it was found that the old woman had been lying dead inside the house for many days. That poor girl couldn't even call anyone for help because she was dumb. Then, some men from the church conducted her funeral. Hearing this, I too felt sorry for that old woman. I went back to the cemetery and took some things with me. I had brought candles, incense sticks, and flowers. I placed flowers on her grave, lit candles and incense sticks, and kept a packet of biscuits near her grave. By now, I had understood why she was crying at my door last night. Maybe I wanted her to eat something. After that night, I never saw that old woman again. My name is Pushpa, and this story is from when I was newly married. In the village where I got married, there was a church of the British era, and behind it, there was a broken house in which the pastor of that church and his wife used to live there. But after he and his wife's death, that house was locked, and with time, that house was now on Kandrai's hut. The Kandrai was like a golf ground. It was very clean and neat in that place. There were no houses far and wide. There were only fields. Fields where women used to work during the day. My in-laws' farm was also there. There were the same broken Kandrai. Then my mother-in-law called me. I looked around and saw my mother. Sansa was nowhere to be seen. I called her, And she said, "Pushpa, come here and pick up this bundle of grass and put it on my head." I did not know that my mother-in-law had also come to the field. I went towards her voice. After reaching there, I looked around. She was nowhere, so I called out to my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law said, "Look behind you. I am behind you." I turned and looked behind me, but behind me was not my breath. But the two were there inside, which the pastor and his wife were buried. I called out to my mother-in-law, but this time, my mother-in-law did not respond, but I heard the muffled laughter of two people, one of a man and the other of a woman. I looked carefully towards those two graves and realized that that suppressed laughter was coming from those graves. I immediately ran away from there in fear and ran straight through the zigzag paths and reached my home. On reaching home, I asked my mother-in-law whether she had come to the fields. She said no, so why was she asking? Then I told my mother-in-law that someone in her voice called me near those two graves, and when I reached there, I heard the sound of laughter from those two graves. Then my mother-in-law told that that place is haunted. There's a ghost of that pastor and his wife. The spirit still roams around, but it does not harm anyone. Yes, if the drunkards who were gambling there were slapped or kicked and run away from the church, then the spirit of that pastor and his wife had only joked with me. I am still there today. I am Kundrai. Sometimes I hum while cutting grass. Then I hear someone else humming along with my voice, but I am not afraid, yes, but I definitely remain silent, because after all, he is a ghost. My name is Seema, and this incident is from my childhood in the year 1995, when I was only 12 years old, and I did not know about anything like ghosts. One evening, I was playing hide and seek with other children. I was crazy, and I went near a pillar and turned my back towards the rest of the children and started counting. Till then, everyone hid here and there. Now it was my turn to find everyone, but I don't know in which place everyone had gone and hidden that I could not find them. The place where we were playing hide and seek was an empty plot, which was at a short distance from our house. On one side of that plot, there was a house which was only half built, that is, its roof and walls had been built, but the windows were not installed, and neither was it painted. That house was left half built many years ago. On the other side of that plot, there was a foundation on which the house was yet to be built, but that too was left half built. After the place in which we children used to play, there was a forest of eucalyptus, in the middle of which there was a cemetery. Due to the same cemetery, the colony was not able to settle there. Those who tried to build a house, their work stopped midway. But anyway, it was a good place for us to play. We would run around on the foundation, hide inside those unfinished houses, sometimes even hide in the bushes among the eucalyptus trees. That evening, when I was looking for my friends, I looked for them everywhere, but I could not find him anywhere. Then I saw the back of one of my friends hiding among the eucalyptus trees. I quietly went towards that place, and when I reached there, I saw that he had gone further away. While doing this, I went deep into that forest. Entered, I saw that there was a cemetery in front of me. I had heard about that cemetery, but today I was seeing it for the first time. The wall of that cemetery was broken on one side, and I went inside it and saw my friend. I broke his ice. I was about to agree, so I went inside that cemetery. was already evening. By this time, I should have gone home, but I was still wandering there. I tried hard to find my friend, but I could not see him anywhere. There were a lot of graves in that cemetery, and there were bushes growing around those graves. I looked everywhere, but I could not see my friend anywhere. Then I gave up and called my friend's name and called him and said, "Come on, friend, it is too late. I have gone home." Then someone hit me on the back, just like someone hits me while hiding. In the same way, I looked back, thinking that it must be my friend. But there was no one behind. I told him, "Friend, you have hidden yourself again. Come home. Let's go at night. It's about to happen again." Someone touched my back. I turned again and looked back, but still, there was no one there. Now, something did not seem right to me. I called my friend's name in a trembling voice. Just then, someone touched my back again. He hit me, and this time he hit me with such force that I fell on the ground. And then some invisible force caught hold of my legs and dragged me. I started crying loudly and struggling to free myself. My legs were raised in the air, and who knows who was dragging me on the ground. Then, hearing my scream, my friends came running there and found me lying on the ground. They picked me up and took me out of that graveyard. When we were going towards home, I told her everything. After reaching home, my mother beat me a lot, and from the next day, I stopped going to play. My mother told me that once a ghost gets on top of my head, it is very difficult to get it off. It is difficult. One of my aunts was very beautiful. She was also possessed by a ghost, due to which she went mad, and then one day she died. Hearing this, I also started getting scared, and then I never wanted to play in that direction. Even today, I stay away from places like cemeteries and crematoriums. My name is Manish, and today I'm going to tell you about a very scary incident that happened to me. An incident which is not easy to believe. Actually, it happened when I used to do motovlogging. It is the year 2018. I was very fond of camping. I used to go solo camping in any place, be it forest, riverbank, or desert. I used to set up my camp anywhere, and I used to make videos of that entire trip so that the views are good. Whenever I used to come, my enthusiasm would increase even more, and then I used to go camping in more isolated places. Similarly, once I was going to a hill station, I was late by the time I reached there, so I went camping on the side of the road. I decided to find a good place, and then I started setting up my camp. While setting up the tent, I was shooting the video. Then I made Maggie, and after eating Maggie, I entered my tent and slept. In the middle of the night, I heard the cry of a child. That child was crying very loudly. I thought there must be some house nearby, and this crying sound must be coming from there. I started trying to sleep again, but then gradually the crying sound started increasing, and now it was not one, but three. The sound of 4 or 5 children crying was heard. It was very strange because the children were crying, and their parents were not able to even listen to them. I put headphones in my ears and played music at a low volume and went to sleep. When I woke up the next morning, I looked around carefully. There were no houses around, and just a short distance from my tent, there was a very deep ditch. It seemed as if there had been a landslide there a few years ago. I looked around. I looked carefully, but there was no house there. Then I thought where the sound of children crying at night was coming from. I could not understand the answer to this question. I collected all my camping stuff and tied it on my bike and proceeded from there. After going a little distance from there, I saw a tea stall on the side of the road. I stopped my bike in front of it and sat in a chair and ordered a bun and tea. I asked the tea stall owner, "Brother, there is a tea stall behind here. There was a place where I had camped last night. I stayed there at night. At night, I heard the crying of some children. I thought there would be houses nearby, but there were no houses far away. There was probably a deep ditch. There must have been a landslide there before. Can you tell me which place it was?" So the chai seller first looked at me from top to bottom and said that now I will not stop there, especially not at night. I don't know which place it is, how it is there, but who knows what are the dangers. It is not right to stay alone in such places. The place you are talking about where you stayed last night, there used to be a small village at that place, but on a rainy night, due to the cloudburst, the entire village collapsed along with the mountain. Now, I cannot say anything about where the sound of children crying was coming from, because we never stayed there at night. It is possible that if there is any jackal around the tent, he too cries like a child. After listening to the person, I was convinced that the voice last night was not of the children, but of CR. So I focused back on my tea. Meanwhile, I took out my GoPro and checked the video footage. Then I saw what I saw in that video footage. I got goosebumps when I saw in that footage that while I was making Maggie outside my tent, at some distance from my tent, 4 small children were standing looking at me. And then, in the smoke of the burning fire, I don't know where they disappeared. When I zoomed in on that footage, I noticed that the pupils of the eyes of those 4 children were missing, and seeing this gave me goosebumps. I quickly finished my tea and moved ahead from there. I went to a hotel, stayed the night, and the next day I came straight back to my home. After reaching home, when I took out the SD card of my GoPro and inserted it in my laptop, you will not believe that the SD card got corrupted. All the footage in it disappeared. Whoever I told about the incident did not believe me, but I only know that what I saw and what I heard is the truth. Friends, if you liked this story, then do like this video. If you have not subscribed to the channel, then subscribe. There are many more interesting stories like this in my channel. Do listen to them too. And thank you for listening to this story till here.